Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. So shall we get going?
Yes,
Give
sir.
permission. Okay, what you need to understand before I proceed is that what I'm doing with the Eleatic or Eleatic, actually I'm told the correct pronunciation of this is Eleatic. It's neither Elia or Elia, but Elia. Eleatic School. The Eleatic School serves as an introduction to Plato. Okay, and especially especially if you are looking at this, I mean, the Eleatic School serves as an introduction to Plato and even to Aristotle to a certain extent, but more to Plato. And of course, it also summarizes a bit of the Greek political thinking. Now, between the Eleatic school and the Milesian school, you will find that there is this very important figure whose name I have not mentioned thus far. His name is, of course, you know, all of you know him. If you've done his theorem, you'll know who Pythagoras is. It's not pronounced Pythagoras, I'm told. It's supposed to be pronounced Pythagoras, is what people tell me. Okay, and in between the Milesians and the Eleatic school, we have Pythagoras, but I haven't spoken about him, and I have done so deliberately because I believe that when we start talking about Plato, uh, Pythagoras will make greater sense there. Okay, um, so for the time being, I have kept Pythagoras on hold, so to speak, and I'm going to be concentrating on the Eleatic school. And I told you yesterday that this begins with Xenophanes of Colophon, but though he's from Colophon, he's considered to be the actually the founder of the uh, Asiatic school. And while talking about Xenophanes, I have talked to you yesterday about what he actually talked about as atoms. Now, you must understand that the atoms that he is talking about are not the atoms that this was a clarification that I should have given you yesterday, which I didn't. Uh, what we must understand is that the atoms that he's talking about are not to be understood as atoms as we know them. Okay, the way we have to understand these is with this particular term, monads. Okay, this is a better term. That's also not a Greek term, but it is nevertheless a better term to understand what Xenophanes is saying. And this particular term, monads, or phrase, or though it's a single word, you don't call it a word, you'll call it either a term or as a phrase. This was used by the German thinker Leibniz in the Wilhelm Leibniz, that is his full name. You will find him using this particular term, um, monads. Okay, and Leibnizian philosophy is also described by some as monadology. So, what exactly are monads and how do we understand them? A better way of approaching monads is through Leibniz than through Xenophanes, because Leibniz describes life and death. Okay, he describes life and death in these as per monads. Okay, he believes that if you have a concentration of monads, then you have concentration of monads is life. and dispersion of monads is death. This is basically what you find in uh, Leibniz. So, what Xenophanes is saying is also similar to this. Though I would say that the Leibnizian description of monads is a little too simple compared to the description made by Xenophanes. And it is for that reason that we will basically say that, uh, it's not just monads that Xenophanes is talking about. He's also talking about something which resembles the modern atom. Now, I really don't want to steep you into these aspects of Greek philosophy because, frankly speaking, we don't really need to know these things in great depth. But these are nevertheless uh, a complete requirement if you want to understand Plato. Without understanding uh, the Eleatic school, which is a reaction to the Milesian school, without understanding especially Parmenides, um, and to a certain extent even Zeno, uh, you cannot understand Plato. And you certainly cannot understand Plato without taking into consideration the philosophy of Pythagoras. Okay, uh, please don't see him as a mathematician or a geometrist. Okay, he is a philosopher who also dabbled in the good old days. People were not bound by disciplines as we are today. Okay, they dabbled in everything, and while dabbling in everything, or in the process of dabbling in everything, they were able to generate uh, tremendous forms of thought and ideas with which we are still grappling. Okay, in fact, when we talk of Zeno, I'll tell you the thing with Zeno is that he has confounded physicists for over 2 millennia. Okay, physicists have pulled, some of them have pulled their hair out, some of them have grown beards in frustration and have not understood him clearly. So, that is the nature of Greek political thought. So, one should uh, therefore understand all these developments and not start with Plato directly. Then you're saying, I'm starting with 51, 52, and then you'll say, what was before? Okay, or you might start believing that the first numeral is 51. Okay, that's not what it is, of course. So, so the atoms are also translated as monads. Um, And like I said, Leibniz borrowed this from Xenophanes, but he managed to not get into the complexities of the theory of monads that you find in Xenophanes, which is also called atoms. I'm not very sure if we can call them that, because atoms is now a very specific term of physics, but you will see that the reference to this is in Aristotle's physics, and therefore probably he was talking about atoms, though we don't really know what, at least I don't really know what the Greek uh, equivalent of that is. Anyway, so Xenophanes of Colophon made this rather uh, important uh, contribution, and he can be considered the progenitor of the Asiatic school. But if we are looking at the proper Asiatic school, then we have to look at Parmenides. Yesterday, I was a little scatterbrained because of the problems I was having getting the internet going, and therefore, sorry, therefore, there was a bit of a problem. But today I want to go through this a little more peacefully. Okay, so when we talk about Parmenides, this is the Greek form of ontology, which is also called okay. It is a little uh, mystifying that Aristotle, who is aware of both Parmenides and Zeno, is somebody who prefers to say that the founder of ontology uh, is is Zeno and not Parmenides. Excuse me. Yeah, so I find that a little mystifying, because there is this definite ontological aspect to Parmenides' philosophy, especially if you read a book called Parmenides written by Plato. In that, he mentions this, but for some reason, uh, I don't know what it is very clearly, but Aristotle seems to prefer to lay at the doorstep of Zeno the particular idea of ontology. But we'll come back to that when we start talking about uh, Zeno. Now, if you look at Parmenides, okay, the construct that you will find in Parmenides is that thought and being are the same. We did this yesterday. So when you talk about the being as such, it is the state of existence. That is basically what uh, Parmenides is saying. So it's like saying, uh, I'm sorry, it's like saying that um, the thought is our being or the proof of our being. And therefore, the influence of Parmenides is not just on Plato, it's also on René Descartes. Okay, I think, therefore I am. The proof of one's existence is thought. It isn't exactly the same as thought and being being the same, but it derives itself out of that. So Parmenides' influence doesn't stop only at or stop only with Plato or other Greeks. It comes right down into the modern period and into the mind of René Descartes, so to speak. So we are talking about René Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. And now you can look at that in conjunction with this statement that was made by Parmenides. Thought and being are the same. Okay, so it's not an old kind of a thing. It is still prevalent. There are many Cartesians who still use this particular idea. Cogito ergo sum. Anyway, to move on with um, Parmenides. Parmenides, I didn't quote this properly yesterday, I think. It should be that Parmenides believed in the idea out of nothing, nothing comes. Okay. Uh, yesterday I put it as out of nothing comes nothing. So when you say comes nothing, actually it means nothing is something. Okay. So that if you say out of nothing comes nothing is saying that out of nothing comes something. So it's a logical fallacy to put it that way. So please correct it. Out of nothing, nothing comes. Okay. So that is a way to put it. I put it in a wrong way yesterday. And apologies uh, for that. And like I said, most of his ideas come from this work of his, which is now simply called a poem, but some people actually say he had titled it on nature. Okay. Um, but there doesn't seem to be any proof of his having titled the poem as on nature, because nowhere do you see in any of the fragments that are left of the poem is not available in its full form. It's not available in its completeness. And therefore, uh, you must understand that it is only in fragments, and what we know are from that fragments. What is interesting is that there is a view that the poem itself was a revelation. So we should refer to it as the poem because we are talking about it. Uh, Revelation. From whom? So names of two goddesses have been uh, proposed. One is supposed to be either from Persephone or Persephone, whichever way you like. Persephone is one of the goddesses who might have, or is one goddess who might have revealed the poem to or the nature of reality to uh, Parmenides. The other goddess who people talk about is Daiki. Okay, it's not pronounced Daik, it's pronounced Daiki, like Nike, who is also, by the way, a Greek goddess. So I'm surprised that the Greeks didn't take objection to shoes being named after their goddess. Okay, so it is either Persephone or Daiki who basically revealed the nature of the world, and that culminated in the poem, is what people, some people claim. Needless to say, there is no evidence to this, uh, and therefore it should be pushed into the section which is usually called trivia. Okay, and so we'll push it into trivia. It is not an integral part of the philosophy of Parmenides. Now, if you take into consideration Parmenides' views, Uh, Parmenides believes that most people rely upon the unreliable and the deceptive in order to gain knowledge. Okay, he says they rely on the unreliable and the deceptive to gain knowledge. So he says there are two ways in which, uh, you know, not two ways, two views. That's a better word. Two views on reality. And please remember, I have not yet defined reality. I will do so when we come to Plato. Okay? Not now, because that is when it becomes far more poignant and it becomes a lot more necessary for us to understand that particular conception of um, reality. So, what are these two views on reality? Here, uh, the first one is what Parmenides calls the way of the truth. Way of the truth. The Greek usage of this is aletheia. Okay, it's one of those horrible things to pronounce. The Greek language is like that. Okay, the pronunciations aren't clear. It's in some ways, it somehow resembles English to me, because I believe the actual pronunciation of this is aletheia. You don't say aletheia, you say aletheia. Okay, that is what is the word that is used by Parmenides himself, and that is the way of the truth. The second is what he calls the way of appearances, or sometimes it also gets translated as opinions, the way of appearances, or the uh, uh, opinions. Sorry, what am I saying? Just give me a minute, please. My this sorry, this is what is called doxa. Even today, there is a word in English which is called doxology. Okay, so that word continues to exist. Can you just give me a minute's break? I'm having a bit of rotary vertigo, if you don't mind. Just a minute. I hope it'll pass. Sometimes it'll be a okay. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can go on. I'm having a very strong bout of um, rotary vertigo. So if I open my eyes, I'm having a problem. Please excuse me for today. I thought it'll pass. It's not passing.
Okay, sir.
I'm very sorry about this. And um, uh, hopefully I'll meet you in the evening.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'm
Thank
very
you.
sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm very, very sorry, but this is it's a very bad bout. So sorry.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Take
Right.
care, sir.
Bye.